The rain hammered the cheap green canopy like it had a personal grudge. My mother whispered under her breath, "He deserved this," as the last distant cousins scurried to their dry SUV. That night, my father's phone, the one we'd just buried, buzzed in my pocket with 8 impossible words. "I'm alive. Come to the cemetery now." I sprinted through the storm, met the dead man who hugged me so tight I felt his heartbeat. But it was what my mother confessed next that truly torched Sunnyvale Estates. "My name is Piper Hayes, 29, graphic designer in Cleveland suburbs. Until this morning, my biggest worry was a missed HOA newsletter. Now I was the daughter standing in a downpour beside a rectangle of fresh mud in Willow Creek Memorial. The kind of old cemetery wedged between rusting factories and the Cuyahoga where angels crumble and names fade. The air smelled of wet dirt, diesel, and the first bite of autumn. My black heels had sunk 6 inches, another tiny loss on a day defined by the biggest one. Graham Hayes was gone, or so the cheap funeral home and the minister who barely knew him claimed. My mother, Loretta Whitmore, yes, the same Loretta who'd been HOA president for 7 years, had vanished the day after he died, taking her shiny new developer boyfriend Brandon Cole straight to Sarasota. Her text while I buttoned my funeral dress had been clinical. "You handle the burial. Busy. Handle it like he was an overdue fine. Not the man who'd built half the custom decks in this neighborhood before the covenants strangled everything." I finally yanked my heels free with a disgusting suck and drove back to my 10th floor loft in the old warehouse district. The silence inside was louder than the rain. I didn't turn on lights. Instagram refreshed on autopilot, and there she was, Loretta and Brandon. Sunglasses perched like crowns. Clinking champagne flutes on a yacht. Turquoise ocean. Perfect sky. Caption posted while Dad's casket was still being lowered. Fresh tides. New covenants. New deals. My father's body wasn't cold, and she was celebrating. The rage hit like the thunder outside. Dad hadn't just been her husband. He'd been the guy who fought every petty rule. Grass no taller than 3 inches. No visible tomatoes. Flagpoles, only if approved beige. He designed the community gazebo for free. His hands smelled of sawdust and stain. Loretta had always managed the HOA books. 6 months ago, she'd brought Brandon in as strategic partner to scale the association. Dad had yelled one night, "He wants to liquidate the soul of this place and turn it into a franchise." She'd snapped back, "It's called progress. Graham, you're stuck in sawdust." Now the pieces clicked with terrifying speed. The sudden heart event at his workshop. The rushed paperwork. No full autopsy. The funeral home she'd personally recommended. And that Instagram post wasn't tasteless, it was victory. I stood dripping in my funeral dress when my phone buzzed again. The contact photo was Dad holding up a ridiculous base last summer. The name Dad. My blood turned to ice. The message, "I'm alive. Come to the cemetery now." Then another, "Don't call. They're listening. Just come. I'm cold. Piper, please. I'm cold." Logic screamed prank. Hope screamed louder. I ran. I skidded through red lights. Wipers losing the war against the deluge. The iron gates were chained. I killed the lights. Slipped through a bent bar the groundskeepers never fixed. And slogged toward the new section. Flashlight beam pathetic in the downpour. The fresh mound. The cheap flowers. Then a shape peeled from the black oak. It was him. Pale. Terrified. Solid. He crushed me in an embrace that smelled of river mud and the faint tang of varnish under wet leaves. His heart hammered against mine. Not a ghost. Not a corpse. "Piper," he rasped. "Quiet. Someone's watching." He dragged me deeper, off the path, to an ancient hatchback hidden behind a maintenance shed. The engine caught on the 3rd try. We rammed a service gate and fled into the industrial maze Dad knew like his own blueprints. Headlights swept the cemetery behind us, A black SUV. New. Expensive. Brandon's men. We finally slid into a hidden warehouse off the books. His first workshop, stacked with walnut and cherry he'd kept for overflow. The air smelled like childhood. He powered up an old laptop. She tried to make me sign in the hospital bed, he said. Voice raw. Full transfer of my deed and HOA voting rights. Citing incapacity. I refused. She smiled and said, He's non-compliant. We'll proceed with the alternative. The alternative had been simple. Let the stress finish him or help it along. But Dr. May Benton, old friend, saw the visitor's log, the lawyer, the look on Dad's face. She faked the code blue, pronounced him dead on paper, wheeled him out in a body bag, weighted casket, rushed funeral. Loretta thought she'd won. The Lakefront Horizons project, the $18 million deal to upgrade the entire neighborhood into luxury condos, was wired to hit tomorrow. With Dad dead and forged documents giving her sole control, she and Brandon could drain the escrow, bankrupt the community fund, and rebrand Sunnyvale Estates as their cash machine. I stared at the screen. Forged emails time-stamped while he was on the EKG. High-res scanned signature. Shell company invoices for consulting that were really kickbacks. She thinks I'm broken, I said quietly. I'm going to play the grieving daughter. Call her crying. Tell her I trust her completely. While she sips champagne, I'll get the originals from her home office safe. Then we burn her empire down. Dad's eyes search mine. Be careful. She's not just greedy. She's terrified of losing the throne. 2 days later, I was the perfect picture of collapse. I sobbed on the phone to Loretta in Sarasota. I can't handle any of this. Mom, the estate, the paperwork, I'm so grateful you and Brandon are strong enough. Her voice dripped false honey. Of course. Baby, just rest. Your key card still works if you need sentimental things from a house. Arrogance. She hadn't even deactivated my access. At 2 a.m., I crouched across from the Whitmore McMansion with cousin Rory Vale, cyber genius who owed me a favor from college. His laptop glowed. Their security is HOA-grade trash. Cameras looping. You're invisible for 90 seconds. Plant the fake USB. Grab the real one. I slipped in through the side door using the old brass key Dad had kept for emergencies. The office smelled of expensive perfume and printer ink. Behind the framed Community of the Year plaque was the digital safe. Code 0413. Day she became treasurer. Click. Thick folder of forged liens. Handwritten ledger of kickbacks. Silver USB drive. I photographed everything with Rory's macro lens. Swapped the USB with a blank. And was sliding the plaque back when the alarm shrieked. Footsteps. Heels. Loretta's voice from the showroom. I thought I heard something. Brandon snapped. Sweep the floor. I dove between towering racks of approved beige paint samples. Red strobes pulsed. The guard's flashlight swept inches from my face. Rory's voice in my ear. Water flow distraction in the utility closet. Go now. I ghosted out the freight door. Dove into Rory's rental, and we vanished into the grid. The USB was warm in my pocket. We'd kicked the hornet's nest. The next morning my phone rang. Loretta, Syrupy, the lawyers need your signature on a few forms. Honey, can you come to the house? It wasn't an invitation. It was a test. I put on the same black dress. Voice memo app recording in my breast pocket. At the dining table sat a 3-inch stack of documents. She slid the top sheet forward. Authorization for executive control. New clause at the bottom waived any future contest of her decisions. I let my voice crack. I trust you completely. Mom. Her jaw relaxed a fraction. She thought she had me. I probed gently. Dad was so worried about those consulting fees for Brandon. Her smile stayed plastered, but her eyes went flat. Restructuring a legacy neighborhood is complex. Piper. It requires high-tier expertise. Corporate speak for theft. I fed her the bait. I'm overwhelmed. I'll sign anything you need. Relief flooded her face. She thought the game was over. But my phone buzzed under the table. Rory, USB analysis complete. Automated transfer script set for tomorrow noon. We had 48 hours before the $6 million escrow vanished into their shell company. I left looking shattered. Inside, I was steel. We didn't sleep. Rory, Dad in the warehouse. DR. May. And I built the bomb. Timestamps. Photos. Ledger scans. Audio. Hospital logs. Attorney Atticus Rowe guided us. Upload anonymously to the SEC and FBI portals. Parallel file to the DA for immediate freeze. By dawn, the package was sent. The wire transfer bounced at noon. Brandon tried to reroute through a new LLC, Harbor Quill. Rory traced the metadata straight back to him. Loretta panicked. She summoned me again. I played broken. I'll sign tomorrow at the annual HOA meeting. Just make sure everything is clean first. She agreed too fast. That night, at the clubhouse dinner overlooking the lake, glass walls. City lights reflecting perfectly. I wore the recorder in my cuff and left my phone on the table. Front camera live. I opened with nostalgia. Remember when Dad built the gazebo? You looked so happy. She relaxed, boasting about global potential. I leaned in. How did you finally handle his stubbornness? She sipped wine, smile thin. When a piece refuses to move, some people just have to leave the board. I pushed. His health, the timing was unfortunate. Her eyes emptied. Health is fragile. Stress. Medications. Timing, sometimes it's just unfortunate. Brandon arrived furious. The accounts were frozen. I acted terrified. I can't sign if it's messy. Loretta grabbed my wrist. It's already clean. Hospital records wiped. As far as the world knows. It was a simple heart attack. I let a real tear fall. If Dad could hear you. She scoffed. Stop being sentimental. He can't hear anymore. I had it. All of it. I walked out calm. Texted Atticus. Get them. The annual HOA meeting was her coronation. Podium. Local news. Residents packed in. Loretta in severe black suit. Brandon whispering. She introduced me as the grieving daughter blessing the transition. I signed her document, but Atticus had swapped it for one requesting immediate forensic audit. She didn't even read it. 5 sentences into her victory speech, the doors burst open. FBI and county agents. Loretta Whitmore. Brandon Cole. We have warrants for wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Then the side door opened. Dad stepped out in his work flannel, alive and furious. The room exploded. Cameras flashed. Loretta gasped. No, we buried you. This is a trick. Dad handed the agent the portfolio, real signatures, original contracts showing the fraud. Brandon bolted. Police were waiting. Loretta lunged at Dad, screaming, "You ruined it." I stepped between them. She hissed the words that would headline every paper. If that doctor hadn't interfered, your father would have actually stayed dead. The courtroom the next week was packed. Evidence played. Hospital logs. Forged signatures. My restaurant recording. The cemetery confession where she admitted everything to the wired mic. The judge's gavel fell. Brandon, 20 years. Loretta, 35 to life. The community fund was saved. The absurd rules were repealed in the emergency vote. Residents cheered. Dad and I stood in the old workshop at dawn. I threw the main breaker. The saw spun up, screaming life back into the place. The tyranny was over. The neighborhood could finally breathe. And somewhere in a Florida jail cell, the ultimate Karen was learning that no amount of covenants could bury the truth forever. The rain that day had felt personal, like the sky itself was mourning the death of common sense in Sunnyvale Estates. I stood there alone after everyone else fled to their climate-controlled SUVs, watching muddy water pool around the cheap temporary marker that read Graham Hayes, beloved resident. Beloved until the covenants said otherwise. My mother, Loretta Whitmore, HOA president extraordinaire, hadn't bothered to show. Her text that morning had been colder than the Ohio wind. Handle the burial. Busy with new deals in Sarasota. Busy toasting her freedom while Dad's casket disappeared into the dirt. Back in my loft, the Instagram feed twisted the knife. There she was, Loretta and Brandon Cole, her strategic partner, clinking glasses on a yacht. Caption screaming victory, fresh tides, new covenants, new deals. Dad's body wasn't even cold, and she was already rewriting the neighborhood in her image. The suspicion that had been gnawing at me crystallized. The arguments I'd overheard for months. The way she brought Brandon onto the board 6 months ago to modernize everything. Dad had fought every step against the new $500 fine for grass 1/4 inch too tall, against the ban on visible vegetable gardens because they lower property values, against the beige-only paint palette that turned every house into a clone. They're selling the soul of this place, he'd yelled one night. It's called scaling. Graham, she'd snapped. Brandon sees the big picture. Now the big picture looked a lot like grand larceny. My phone buzzed at 11 p.m. The contact photo was Dad holding up that ridiculous fish. The message, I'm alive. Come to the cemetery now. Then the second, don't call. They're listening. Just come. I'm cold. Piper, please. I drove like a maniac. Skidded through the gates. Slipped through the bent bars. Slogged through mud that tried to swallow my sneakers. The flashlight beam found the mound. Then a shape stepped out from the oak. It was him. Real. Shaking. Warm. He pulled me into an embrace that smelled of sawdust and river mud. Not here, he hissed. They're watching. We ran to the hidden hatchback. Tires spun. The black SUV swept the cemetery behind us. Brandon's security goons. Dad killed the headlights and lost them in the industrial maze he knew by heart. In a secret warehouse, he explained everything. The hospital had been the trap. Chest pains from months of stress. Stress she caused with endless fines and threats to Lena's house. Loretta and Brandon arrived with a lawyer. Papers ready. Transfer of deed and voting rights citing incapacity. He refused. She smiled and said, "We'll proceed with the alternative." Dr. May Benton saw the visitor log, recognized the setup. She faked the code blue, pronounced him dead, wheeled him out in a body bag, weighted casket, rushed funeral. Also, Loretta could claim the $18 million lakefront Horizons escrow, the deal to upgrade the entire neighborhood in a luxury condos that was really a kickback scheme. The laptop showed the proof. Forged emails sent while he was hooked to the EKG. Scanned signature. Shell company invoices. I looked at my father, alive, haunted, and felt the rage turn cold and sharp. She thinks I'm the broken daughter. I'm going to play the part. Buy us time. Get the originals from her safe. 2 days of performance. I call crying. I can't handle any of this. Mom. She purred. Of course. Baby. Your key card still works. At 2 a.m., Rory and I sat outside the McMansion. 90-second loop, he whispered. Go. I used the old brass key on the manual override. Inside the office smelled of cold perfume. Safe code 0413, the day she seized power. Inside, the ledger, the forged liens, the USB with the transfer script set for noon tomorrow. I photographed everything, swapped the drive, and was sliding the plaque back when the alarm screamed. Heels clicked. Loretta's voice. I thought I heard something. Brandon snapped orders. I dove between the paint sample racks. Rory triggered the water flow distraction. I ghosted out the freight door, dove into the car, and we disappeared. The USB confirmed the script. 48 hours until the money vanished. The next morning, Loretta called. Lawyers need your signature. Honey, come to the house. Test. I went in the black dress. Voice memo recording. She slid the waiver across the mahogany. New clause. I could never contest anything she did. I let tears fill my eyes. I trust you completely. Her shoulders relaxed. She thought she'd won. But Rory texted under the table. Transfer script confirmed. We had the bomb ready. I left looking shattered. Inside, I was planning the endgame. We worked through the night in the climate-controlled storage unit. Dad, Rory, DR, May, Atticus on speaker. Timestamps matched perfectly. Visitor log, 2:07 p.m. Forged email, sent 2:35 p.m. From a hospital business center while Dad was still alive and terrified. The ledger showed every kickback. The restaurant recording captured her cold admission. The cemetery confession would be the final nail. We uploaded anonymously to the feds. Atticus walked the parallel file to the DA. By noon, the wire bounced. Accounts frozen. Brandon panicked and tried a new shell. Harbor Quill. Rory traced the metadata straight back to him. Loretta summoned me again. I played the broken daughter. I'll sign tomorrow at the annual meeting. Just make sure everything is clean first. She agreed too fast. That night at the Lakeside Clubhouse, glass walls reflecting the city like a mirror, I wore the cuff recorder and left my phone camera live. I opened with memories. Remember the gazebo Dad built? You looked so happy. She relaxed into boasting. You can't build an empire by staying small. Piper. Global potential. Brandon sees it. I leaned in. How did you finally handle Dad's stubbornness? Her smile thinned. When a piece refuses to move, some people just have to leave the board. I pushed the health angle. She mused. Stress. Medications. Timing, sometimes it's just unfortunate. Brandon burst in furious. The accounts were frozen. I acted terrified. I can't sign if it's messy. Loretta grabbed my wrist. It's already clean. Hospital records wiped. Simple heart attack as far as the world knows. I'll let the tear fall. If Dad could hear you. She scoffed. He can't hear anymore. I had the confession. I walked out calm. Texted Atticus. Get them. The annual meeting was her stage. Podium bristling with mics. Residents packed in. She introduced me as the grieving daughter blessing the new era. I signed the document Atticus had swapped, requesting full forensic audit. She didn't read it. 5 sentences into her speech, the doors exploded open. FBI and county agents. Warrants for wire fraud. Forgery. Conspiracy. Then the side door opened. Dad stepped out alive. The room detonated. Cameras flashed. Loretta gasped. No, we buried you. Dad handed over the portfolio. Original signatures. Contracts proving the fraud. Brandon bolted. Police waited. Loretta lunged, screaming. You ruined everything. I stepped between them. She hissed the damning line for every camera. If that doctor hadn't interfered, your father would have actually stayed dead. The courtroom the next week played every piece of evidence. The judge's face was stone. Brandon Cole, 20 years. Loretta Whitmore, 35 to life. The community fund was saved. The ridiculous rules repealed. Residents cheered as the beige paint mandate died forever. Dad and I stood in the workshop at dawn. I threw the breaker. The saw screamed back to life. The Karen Empire was gone. Sunnyvale Estates could finally breathe. The preliminary hearing was a circus. Press packed every bench. Loretta sat immaculate in navy, refusing to look at me. Brandon's lawyer tried to paint him as the innocent dupe. The prosecution played the restaurant recording, her cold voice admitting the hospital records were wiped. Then the cemetery tape where she screamed she wished Dad had stayed dead. The judge didn't deliberate long. No bail for either. That night, the burner phone buzzed. Cemetery. Now. Come alone, or I swear I'll tell them you planned it. Loretta was breaking house arrest. Desperation move. Atticus and the DA wired me. Team 200 yards out. I stood by the grave again, microphone taped to my collar. She emerged from the mausoleum shadows, diminished. Hair unkempt. You did this, she rasped. You and him ruined everything. I stayed cold. I just need to know why. It was already yours. Why kill him? She laughed, ugly and dry. Kill him? I made him. I built the empire. He was going to give it all to you, push me out. So I acted. It was clean. Perfect. Until that doctor interfered. She kicked the marker. He'd be in this box right now if she hadn't stuck her nose in. Floodlights exploded. Police swarmed. Loretta Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. She saw the wire. Saw the pity in my eyes. You tricked me. I stepped to the edge of the grave. No, Mom. I just let you finally tell the truth. The sentencing was a formality. The judge read the charges: wire fraud, evidence tampering, conspiracy to murder. 35 to life. No parole. Brandon took 20. The community voted emergency bylaws. All the petty rules, grass fines, no bans, flag restrictions, were repealed in one glorious afternoon. Residents tore down the beige paint swatches in celebration. Dad and I walked the neighborhood at dusk. For the first time in years, no one was measuring lawn height with a ruler. Kids played in actual vegetable gardens. Flags flew in every color. He put his arm around me. We saved it. Piper. Not just the house. The soul of the place. I smiled. And the ultimate Karen finally learned that no covenant can bury the truth. The rain started again, soft, cleansing. I tilted my face up and let it wash the last of the mud away. The next morning, I drove to the workshop. Sun rising weak and orange over the flats. Dad was already at the bench, hands on raw walnut. I walked to the breaker box, heavy and cold. I threw the switch. The ventilation hummed. One by one, the table saws spun up, screaming life back into the space. The sound of creation, the sound of freedom. We didn't need words. We just worked side by side like we used to before the covenants try to kill everything beautiful. Outside, the neighborhood woke up different. No more anonymous complaint letters about unsightly tomato plants. No more $500 fines for a flag 1 inch too tall. The HOA board was disbanded and replaced by a simple neighborhood committee that actually listened. Residents stopped me on the sidewalk to thank me. We thought we were stuck forever, one neighbor said, tears in her eyes. You and your dad gave us our homes back. I didn't give speeches. I just nodded and kept walking. The record spoke louder than any soundbite. That evening, Dad and I sat on the deck he'd built years ago, the one Loretta had tried to find into oblivion. We watched the sun set over the Cuyahoga, the factory's glowing gold. You know, he said quietly, I never wanted to fight. I just wanted to build things that lasted. I squeezed his hand. You did. And now they'll last forever. Somewhere in a federal prison, Loretta Whitmore, the woman who once ruled with an iron clipboard, was learning that power built on fear and forgery eventually collapses under its own weight. The ultimate Karen had met the ultimate rule she couldn't rewrite. You can't bury the truth when it refuses to stay dead. And somewhere in Sunnyvale Estates, for the first time in years, people were laughing in their yards, growing tomatoes without fear, flying flags in every color, and remembering what a real community felt like. The rain had stopped. The sky was clear. And for the first time since that stormy funeral, I could finally breathe. Thank you for listening to this entire HOA Karen saga. Drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you raged and laughed with me, smash that like button, subscribe for more neighborhood nightmares turn justice, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next takedown.